Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We greet you in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, and it's my privilege to welcome you, family, and dear friends of Lillian. This will be a day of many mixed emotions. It will be a day of remembering and longing, of grieving and rejoicing, of crying and laughing, when we recognize the reality of separation, but also the comfort of loving embraces, when we feel deeply how brief and uncertain life is, but when we also stand on the firm foundation of God's Word and the blessed assurance of life everlasting. As we begin our service today, let's stand and pray together the prayer that Jesus taught his disciples. Our Father,
which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
The 23rd Psalm is 115 words and 7 sentences. Words that perhaps have brought more comfort and hope to generation after generation than any other words ever written or spoken. So let's repeat these words together.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and staff comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Thank you. Please be seated. To make this celebration very personal and very compelling as well, we're going to hear from 4 individuals in just a moment who knew her very well. The scriptures tell us that our life is like a story that is told. Here is Lil's story in a few brief words. Lillian Ruth Sutton Lundberg was born on July 8, 1933 in Mosinee, Wisconsin. She was the firstborn daughter of the late Wallace and Ilo Sutton. She lived for most of her childhood on the Pumpkin Hollow family farm in Arpin, Wisconsin, with her 8 siblings. She walked daily to a one-room schoolhouse. It doesn't say whether she walked uphill both ways. And then she attended Marshfield School, where she graduated from high school in 1951. After high school, she attended the Wood County Normal School in Wisconsin Rapids for Teachers College, and following graduation taught at a one-room school south of Marshfield. She was united in marriage on June 11, 1955 to Charles Lundberg in Wisconsin Rapids, and they started their first home in the Plainfield, Wisconsin area. They were married for 62 years and were blessed with 5 children. Lillian decided to be a stay-at-home mom, but always had a great desire to work with children. After teaching school for a semester in the town of Saratoga in Wood County, she started a 4-H club in that community, which grew to a junior and senior club involved in many activities. All her adult life, she worked with children. In 4-H, a county-wide clowning program, puppetry, children's church, the Awana Club, and in all areas of children's ministry. In 1971, the family moved to Ironwood, Wisconsin. She managed the food services at Whitecap Mountain Ski Area for many years, and then in 1985 started her own honor snack business, Honey's Kitchen, which she operated for about 7 years. Her first love of working with children called her back again, and she became the first teacher at the newly started Northwoods Christian Academy in Hurley for 4 years before retiring in the spring of 1996. In 2013, Chuck and Lil sold their home in Ironwood and moved to Villa Vista Apartments in Hurley. She is survived by her 5 children: Joy, Steve Petrick of Marinette, Wisconsin; Tammy Lundberg of Wausau, Wisconsin; Randy Barb Lundberg of Ashland, Wisconsin; Debbie Keith Stoner of Siren, Wisconsin; and Vicki John Ginsfeld of Ripon, Wisconsin. Siblings: Carolyn Polisari of Wausau, Wisconsin; Sherry Merle Owens of Palatine, Illinois; Elaine Sutton of Louisville, Ohio; Barbie Paris of Mosinee, Wisconsin; and David Sutton of Washington, Missouri. And also surviving are 7 grandchildren and 5.5. In addition to her parents and husband, who passed away on June 2nd, 2017, Lil was preceded in death by her brothers Arlen, Dale, and Ralph. Lil passed away on December 14th, 2021, with her loving family surrounding her. Okay, George, you're first up.
He's coming.
Thanks, I needed a break. I just wrote something in honor of Lil. We've known her a long time, and she was a very dear friend to us. Can everyone hear me all right?
No.
Is that moped? I have to look to the last page to find the title of this. It is, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. The tenets of faith and worship, Christian conduct, the Word of God, and many other concrete blocks that make up the constitutional bulwark of our Woodland Baptist Church. In that, there is actually an unwritten article that could be worded: when a situation makes a potluck dinner appropriate or necessary, announce it in the weekly bulletin or at the spur of the moment. No encouragement or prodding will be necessary. The potluck dinner has been absorbed into our collective fabric as our skins absorb water during immersion baptism. It is a Baptist institution. Harrison Keeler gave his take on potlucks in his book, Life Among the Lutherans. I believe this is also true of Baptists. You have fed me wretched food, vegetables boiled to extinction, fistfuls of white sugar, slabs of fat, mucousy casseroles made of gobs of cream of mushroom, until it's amazing, my heart still beats. The cream of mushroom could include anything that is a white sauce, possibly containing a substance that is toxic to my entire sensory spectrum, that is, mayonnaise. I may refer to it as just M. Sometimes mayonnaise, or M, surreptitiously becomes an ingredient only detected by the most vigilant palates. By that time, the contraband chicken triggers a red alarm for me that it's too late. I gag down that forkful, but what do I do with the rest? I don't want to offend anyone. I'll eat the peripheral food, the plain green beans, the buttered roll, and wait until the coast is clear. Then I'll drop my napkin over the plate and pretend and proceed to the garbage receptacle. You see, my name is George. and I'm a picky eater. There, I confess my shortcomings publicly. A grand piano has been released from my back, but I'm still a picky eater. Maybe I should start a 12-step meeting called Picky Eaters Anonymous. But decades ago, when I was a young man, precise decades, I think I was 2+ years. I was a secret picky eater and I looked for food unspoiled by foreign white substances. I usually proceeded to the dessert table. I lamented that Baptist didn't serve fried chicken, burgers, or even pizza with thin crust. I thought of Lois's late Uncle Eddie, who sustained his life with fried chicken and hamburgers. Uncle Eddie was a Catholic, so I don't know if his church had potluck dinners. Unlike Uncle Eddie, I also ate meat and potatoes. Potlucks happened all too frequently. Lois would remind me as we left for church on Sunday morning, "There's a potluck today, George." I heaved a heavy sigh as we drove to church. I was especially grieved during the football season. A potluck would cause me to miss the first half of the Packer game. When I tuned into the second half and the Packers were in dire straits, I blamed the church potluck. Why couldn't we have cable TV in the church fellowship room? Potlucks were less frequent, especially in early summer with high school graduation. On those occasions, I would make an exit as quickly as possible, just in case there was a spontaneous potluck. And I'd leave with my head slightly down, straight ahead into the glorious sunshine through the open doors, right straight ahead. No potluck today, yay! Get into the car and keep your head down. The fresh summer breeze caressed my face. You'll eat a quick lunch, put on shorts, and get into the backyard sunshine. Hold it right there! I stopped immediately at the bark of our commander of the Awana Clubs. If her life had taken a different turn in her youth, she could have been a Marine drill instructor or a PI. I already told Lois that you two are dinner guests. Dinner will be ready at 1. Yes, ma'am. 1 o'clock sharp, ma'am. We did salute. I thought I heard Bill say, "Dismissed." My afternoon of baking and gamma rays that had made an appointment with me from 93 million miles away, with book in hand and Pink Floyd assaulting my ears through headphones, had just gone through the shredder. She didn't even ask us what our plans were, but she's our commander and she just issued a command. As we were driving toward Iron Belt, I asked Lois, what is little cooking? She said, I didn't ask. You don't ask what somebody's cooking when you invite me for dinner. Another heavy sigh as I tried to concentrate on driving through the main street of Pence, all 50 yards of it on Ruth to Iron Belt. It's always a mistake for me to try to concentrate because something will enter the computer display inside of my mind. A video of our last dinner visit to Lundberg filled my consciousness. The first time, maybe 6 months hence, we pulled up to the terrace of the lawn meticulously kept. Flower beds welcomed us, as did Chuck when he spied us. Their garage was neat and clean, and I inwardly said, how disgusting. You found our house, Chuck said. Yeah, I was lost for a long time. Almost ended up at the Kangas farm. Those piped up. George could get lost in our own house. Bill yelled from the kitchen, come on. I'm setting out the salads. Come on, sit down. And at that juncture I asked, mistakenly, I asked Chuck, is that a Ford F-150 van, Chuck? Why, yes. Isn't it a beauty? But it's great for my plastering business. Get in here, you guys! The commander commanded, and in seconds we were seated at the table. An absolutely enticing aroma of baked chicken wafted about the kitchen. My stomach demanded instant gratification. The salad was of several vegetables, most notably the cherry tomatoes. Lil made an excellent salad. The carrots were finely chopped, the lettuce was dark green, and there was some spinach in there. Just great. Then Lil got the chicken breast in the oven. Something had gone wrong. The much anticipated golden brown had morphed into a ghastly white substance that dripped from each breast. There should be a law against disrespecting a chicken's sacrifice at the end of its life, as it was dealt the final cruel blow with a meat cleaver. Lois passed the plate around. Oh, George, take a bigger breast. Well, maybe Chuck wants that one. It's yours, George, Chuck insisted, beckoning smile. I tried to scrape the white goop from the breast, but my taste buds tasted horrible. There was a combination of vinegar and other contraband. There were chunks of stuff in the whiteness. Mayonnaise! The ultimate insult to my picky palate. My mind was in a whirl. I could not ingest this without bringing it back up. I leaned back in my chair. Is something wrong? Lil's face was concerned. His stomach ache. I don't know, in a sickly voice, but trying not to overdo it. I'm sorry, George. With some Pepto-Bismol help? I don't know. I'll just sit out on the back, on the deck outside. I breathed the superb air that we northern people wait months for. I breathed through my mouth, trying to rid my mouth of the taste of M. But to no avail. No avail. After the others had finished their lunch, Bill poked their head out the door. Are you feeling better? I think so. I modified my pain voice. It was a little pain, not really bad. Would some ice cream help? Just what the doctor ordered. The white noise of air conditioning in the car was suddenly interrupted. Slow down, George. Turn left at 2nd Street. We were in Ironwood. I parked in front of the stately house reflecting early 20th century Ironwood. Chuck met us at the terrace steps and greeted us with his warm hospitality. The same picture, the same scene as the last time, only the leaves had changed ever so slightly. It was like a nightmare that is periodically repeated. Maybe I should feign illness right away. Bill was scurrying about the kitchen. She had only one speech. Fast. She caught sight of me. Come on in, George. She asked me, do you like pork chops, plain pork chops? I love plain pork chops. These are stuffed pork chops. What are they stuffed with? The same stuffing we have on Thanksgiving Day with no white goop. How did you know about goop? If I told you, I'd have to kill you.
That one. Thank you, George. Can everybody hear me, I guess, without a mic, or is that too bad? It's so great to see everybody here. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today for this celebration of our mom's life. It's been over 3 months now since she passed away so unexpectedly, and I still find myself just picking up the phone to give her a call, chat about her day, talk about the latest book she was reading. She was a voracious reader, sometimes going through 2 or more books a week here, especially during COVID. I mean, really, how do you say goodbye to your mama? She was the solid rock center of our family, and certainly the most independent, strongest woman I will ever know. We'd like to honor her today by sharing some insight into the many hats she wore and what an amazing woman she was. First and foremost was the hat of motherhood. She was dedicated to her family as a mother, wife, grand and great-grandmother, sister, sister-in-law, and aunt. And she loved us fiercely and was always there to support us. Sometimes just to lend an ear, sometimes to give her no-nonsense advice, and always keeping us in her prayers. She was also dedicated to many dear friends, some dating back to college days, when they still kept in touch each year with letters and pictures. She loved her birthday club girls, and was also dedicated to her church family, which has always been such a focal part of her life. We thank you for that love and support in Christ. All of you here today have been touched by Mom in some way, and I believe we were just blessed to have known her and share in her life. Mom was also a natural-born leader, as George commented, and honestly, always needed to be the one in charge. I also believe she would have made an excellent Army general. She could see what needed to be done and would lay out her plan to get it completed. Orders would be given, and we were expected to pull our own weight. But she led us by example, and she taught us a strong work ethic and how to work well together. She started the Wood County 4-H Club as a young mother and continued as a leader with the Iron Belt Club as we moved up north. She taught us sewing, macrame, candle making, puppetry, arts and crafts, decoupage, gardening, and others, just to name a few, and also started the calming program countywide before she was finished. She worked winters as head of food service at Whitecap, where many local kids worked for her out at the Hill. And she also led children's church at Woodland for many years. Mom always knew she wanted to be a teacher her entire life and followed that path in some shape or form. She was also very organized and a master of making lists and keeping records. She meticulously tracked her monthly bills and health records. She kept track of the quantity of vegetables frozen and pints of jam processed from her huge gardens each year for her growing family. And she would make adjustments to those notes for following years. When her family grew up and left home, she switched to a beautiful English flower garden and had layouts of all of the plants and how they performed in our northern zones. Truly remarkable. Mom was also an avid game player and very competitive. My early memories of Scrabble games with her mom and her sister Carolyn would get quite lively with call-outs for the infamous Scrabble dictionary as words were challenged. She also enjoyed many different board games, as well as Hearts, Scum, and Solitaire with cards, and she always played to win. She didn't cheat, but she always played to win. I believe it really helped to keep her mind sharp, and our family continues in that gaming tradition when we get together. She loved to entertain, and she did it the old-fashioned way with a beautifully set table and carefully planned meals that most of the time included her signature four-leaf rolls and fancy jellos. It's something we don't do in our busy lives very much these days, but she always enjoyed having family and friends over and made the meals very special. Baking was an even greater art for her. Homemade sweetbreads, cinnamon rolls, and the secret family butterballs. And oh, how she loved the Christmas season, when she would bake dozens and dozens of cookies and then artfully arrange them on plates to give away as gifts. It was her favorite time of the year. She was also an expert cake maker, baking many sheet and wedding cakes for friends and family all of her lifetime. She made each of us, her children, a special birthday cake every year from the time we were born. When we were younger, they were in special shapes and had fun kittles or toys on them. And then she always made our birthdays completely lovely with homemade cards on her computer and special verses created just for us by her. She wasn't a world traveler, but she did manage a fabulous trip to Hawaii with her sister, West Coast trips for reunions, and many stateside trips with her children in the station wagon. We were blessed to have a large extended family on both mom and dad's sides, so we would stop to see aunts, uncles, and cousins along the way and then camp out in between. Our dog often plastered in Wisconsin Rapids during the summer months, so mom would plan out these grand adventures by herself, often taking along her mother too. She did all of the driving, and even though she wasn't great with maps, as long as she had written directions and the color of the house to turn by, she was good to go, and we always made it to our destination. Mom started to struggle these past years with numerous different health issues, but you would never hear her complain. If you ask, how are you feeling? Her sassy answer would be, with my hands. She worked so hard to keep mobile by walking daily and following her doctor's orders as she struggled with a bad lower back and autoimmune issues. One of her favorite passages from the Bible was 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 8 and 9. We are pressed on every side by troubles, but not crushed and broken. We are perplexed because we don't know why things happen as they do, but we don't give up and quit. We are hunted down, but God never abandons us. We get knocked down, but we get up again and keep going. Mom lived these verses and always looked on the bright side and persevered her entire life. What a wonderful legacy to leave behind for her family. So we really won't say goodbye to our mom. We just need to continue to rejoice in the long and very rich life she lived and cherish all the wonderful memories we have of her and know that we will see her again someday. Verse 18 of that same chapter reads, so we do not look at what we can see right now, the troubles all around us, but we look to the joys of heaven, which we have not yet seen. The troubles will soon be over, but the joys to come will last forever. We take heart in the fact that our mom has certainly flown directly into the arms of Jesus, where she is with our dad once again. And we thank you so much for joining us today.
was born to be a teacher and leader, and both of these she was, and excellent at both. She began her teaching career at a very young age, teaching some of her siblings as they appeared over the years. Arlen was just 13 months younger than Lil, but Carolyn came 3 years after Arlen. So by the time she was 3, Lil would have had her first pupil. 13 months later, red-headed Dale arrived, and 3 years later came me, the smack-dab little child. So now she had 3 little pupils under her tutelage. But there were more. 2 years after me, Elaine decided to join the Pumpkin Hollow gang, but born at home. I had just turned 2, but I do have a faint memory of older siblings huddled together, probably upstairs, probably trying to make sense of what was going on downstairs. Her classroom was growing. 3 years after Laney, little Ralphie decided to make his appearance, and almost from the time he could walk, he was always disappearing, either running away with a sack of Johnny cake in hand when he was just 3 to wherever he is to this day. You were in high school at the time Ralphie's birth, so your teaching days were pretty much over. Yikes, Lil, you must have been getting weary of teaching me all our ABCs, numbers, and whatever else you taught us. But then again, we were pretty much forced to play school. Yeah. So we were perhaps relieved by that time. By the time Barbie and David came along, you went on to higher learning to become a real teacher. And now you know why Lil had so much patience and teaching skills. She was trained by all of her younger siblings. That's it in a pumpkin shell, and we were so fortunate to have you as our big, loving sister. We did have parents, but you can see how busy they were creating our family. Plus the running of Pumpkin Hollow, our dairy farm in Arthur, Wisconsin, and our dear mother just trying to keep track of her brood of 9 chicklings over the years. God bless her. While Lil was in Teachers College in Wisconsin Rapids, she met this handsome Swede. One Sunday afternoon, when my cousin and I were riding the Foyers horses, we went down the lane to the old Wells place, and there was my sister and future brother-in-law sitting beneath a tree, showing it how much they liked each other. My sister was not exactly enthusiastic upon our arrival, so we promptly headed back down that lane, stifling giggles. By the end of my 8th grade, these 2 lovebirds had a lovely wedding, and Jeannie and I got to be the candlelighters. Carolyn and Priscilla were bridesmaids, and they looked beautiful, but I felt special in the long green dresses Jeannie and I both had made by dear Aunt Ellie. Thank you, Lil, for my first brand new, I had a word here, but just across behind me. Brand new laundry item. And always the first to enhance my dress. Years later, you became my maid of honor at my wedding. I spent portions of summers with Lil on the marsh, and remember helping Lil pull that wretched whackgrass from her garden each year. It was always a losing battle. One summer, while helping Lil burn debris, I discovered, to my dismay, well, it was me that started it, that the marsh grass caught on fire. We were alone with baby Joy, who was taking a nap. Lil sent me next door, where only Ellie was home. But she soaked gunny sacks in water, and she and Lil, with a little adolescent help from me, started to bat down that fire, which had spread considerably and was burning fast. No telephone either. But neighbor Charlie Hansen called the fire department, and by the time they got there, the fire was out. What a scare we had. And do you remember, Jeannie and Lenore, the many Saturday nights you 2 and darling Margie would sneak over to Lil and Chuck's place late at night, and we'd watch Shock Theater or some movie, then your silent retreat into the black of night to your farm next door. Lil claimed she never knew about these clandestine Saturday nights, and if she noticed the potato chips and dip were suddenly disappearing, she never mentioned it. We were partners in crime. I asked each of my siblings for a childhood memory. Carolyn. A special memory of my big sissy is from childhood, where we played house in the north and south plum tree groves, and she always demanded the north grove was hers. I realize now why she chose that north grove. It was overlooked the prettiest part of our farm. Another memory, and her house was prettier than mine. Another memory is when I was in first grade and I was encouraged to enter a solo contest. And I actually won a blue ribbon. The song was sweet and low. I would not walk up on the stage and perform as I was a shy child. Lil took my hand and walked me upon the stage, then stood inside the curtain, and I actually succeeded in achieving my song. Each morning I sadly looked at the phone, almost expecting it to ring, or that I should be calling my sister for our daily chats. I miss you so much, Sissy. One of my earliest memories of Lil was when I was 3, and she scheduled for me to sing a solo at Maple Grove, our little country school, for the Christmas program. I had the song memorized, but I guess I was hesitant to perform. But Lil threatened me that Santa Claus would not give me the sack of candy at the end of the night's program if I didn't sing. I did make it to the stage, but then hem of my dress pulled up to my face. I backed all the way to the wall, but then did sing my song solo as I wanted that sack of candy. I realized in later years I would have gotten that candy anyway. Lainey, I will share 2 memories of Lil. One is of my wedding, and Carol was my maid of honor, and Sherry was my bridesmaid. Sherry had gotten their dresses in Chicago, but no hats. So, dear Lil made hats for them at the time of my wedding the next day. Lil did her best for what materials were available, and Carolyn and Sherry bared bravely for those hats, which looked like we had many peacocks. Another memory was when we lived in Duluth, and either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, Lillian and family suddenly appeared peeking in our windows and singing Christmas carols. I didn't hear them, but they knocked on our door and surprised us with Christmas gifts. Barbie. A vivid memory I have of Lil is when I was about 12 or 13 and babysitting all 5 of Lil's kids for an entire weekend. Lil and Chuck were out of town, and I was put in charge of everything, even the cooking. And if you knew my cooking skill level at that age, you'd appreciate what a horror even that was. To say I was frazzled and completely overwhelmed is an understatement. I probably never had kids because of that weekend. During that weekend, Randy was so upset with me because I would not let him stay up past his bedtime, no matter how much he begged to watch a program on TV that he really wanted to. Lil had given me very firm instructions in the way Lil could master the giving of firm instructions, not to let him talk me into letting him stay up no matter what. My hands were tied. I made points with Lil for following her instructions, but apparently kind of alienated Randy for quite some time. Sorry, Randy. It remains impossible to wrap my head around the fact that she is really gone, but treasured memories of her will remain in my heart forever. And the last one, from our baby brother David, who couldn't be with us today because of some recent health issues. I was about 14 and had gone deer hunting with Chuck. I didn't get my deer, but I did bag a pair of windshield wipers. Returning to Chuck and Lil's station wagon, I was unloading my rifle when it went off. I shot those windshield wipers like a seasoned hunter. End of story, or so I thought my embarrassment was. But that Christmas, Lillian mounted those windshield wipers onto a mounting board as a trophy for me. I'm so thankful that late last summer, Peggy, my daughter, and my granddaughter, Zoe and Nico, rented a house in Wausau where Lil, Carolyn, and Tammy joined us each day. Barbie was out of town and unable to join us. Lil immediately gathered her grandnieces to each side of her and holding their hands got up to date with them. We let them be, but it was such a sweet sight. We had a marvelous time for 3 days playing games and chatting in the way some of the Sutton sisters chat, which means talking all at once, but always knowing what each other said. Little did we know this would be the last time I'd see my big sister and the girls, their beloved aunt and great aunt. In closing, I'd like to share an experience that my husband Merle, Peggy, and I shared the night after Lil died. I was so distraught and kept asking Lil to send me a sign, which for some reason I needed. Unbeknownst to me, my daughter Peggy had also prayed that a sign be given to her mother whom she needed one. Peggy came after work for dinner that evening, and she left about 7:30, or so. We had gone about 10 to 15 feet out our front door when we noticed the sky to the south flashing the most brilliant colors, then the strangest sound to the west we had ever heard. At first, I thought some weather system was playing with the night skies, but it was extremely mild that night with clear skies. Then we all witnessed the same display of lights with that bizarre sound to the west 2 more times, then it abruptly ended. We believe that this was a miraculous sign for my cherished sister. I believe Lil is scurrying around and busy organizing things in her head, as she did so well here on earth. I miss you so much, Sissy, but I will see you again one day, and as I walk through that brilliant white light, I believe at the end of it, you will be there to welcome me with those 3 endearing words you so often said upon a telephone call to each other. Well, hello, Sherzy.
Thank you so much for each one who has shared. Now, George had about 5 pages of notes. Debbie had 3 or 4. Sherry had 3 or 4. I've only got 2. So we'll be out of here by 3 p.m. easy. I came to know Lil only in the last 2 years of her earthly journey. That's not very long. But when I learned of her death, I felt that I had lost a very dear friend. She was such an encourager. She was a woman of faith. She was fun. She always had that mischievous twinkle in her eye. The verse of scripture the family wanted to use today is Galatians 5:22 and 23, which I think is a fitting description of Lil's personality and character. It reads like this: the fruit of the Spirit, and that is, in other words, this is what God's Spirit produced in her. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. That was Lil in a nutshell. You know, she had been absent from the church fellowship for some months due to COVID and other factors. She finally came back for a service, and after that service, I went up to her and said, well, I'd really like to hug you, but I don't know whether we should. She grabbed my arm and said, Pastor, some things are worth the risk. Let's do it. Little did I know that was the last time I'd hug her or see her in this life. I miss her so much, and I only knew her for a few brief months. I can't imagine how you grieve, those of you who spent years and years with her, and some of you your entire life. We feel pain and grief and loss. We grieve, we cry, we sense the emptiness, but we do not grieve as those who have no hope. We have hope. We have the calm assurance that this is a coronation of Lil to full, abundant, indescribable, eternal life. I want to share some good news and bad news from Scripture. I really hesitate to call it news because these are such simple and well-known ideas, but they are something that we need to constantly be reminded of. Here's the first bad news. Life is short. Psalm 90. For 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that has just gone by, or like a watch in the night. You sweep men away in the sleep of death. They are like the new grass of the morning. Though in the morning it springs up new, by evening it is dry and withered. We are consumed by your anger and terrified by your indignation. All our days pass away under your wrath. We finish our years with a moan. The length of our days is 70 years, or 80 if we have the strength. Yet their span is but trouble and sorrow, for they quickly pass, and we fly away. Our life is like a vapor, like dew that appears in the morning and is gone by noonday. The most amazing play that I have ever seen lasted 90 seconds. The title of the play was Life. The curtain opens, the lights come up, and all you see is a pile of rubble in the middle of the stage. And you hear the cry of a newborn baby. You hear that baby's first breath. He breathes well and strong for 20 seconds. And then the breathing becomes erratic and labored. And then there's a moan and complete silence. A complete lifetime pictured in 90 seconds. That's the bad news. Now the good news, because a few verses down in Psalm 90 it says this, Teach us to number our days aright, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Since we know that our life is so short, we therefore value and we treasure each moment, each day, each encounter. What we need to do today, not tomorrow. Here's another piece of bad news. Death is certain. Every one of us has an appointment with death. It is unavoidable and inescapable. I was reading about a man named Doug Wyckoff. On September 25th, 1978, Doug had a ticket for Pacific Southwest Flight 182 to San Diego. But some last-minute business things came up and he had to cancel that flight and get another flight. Well, Flight 182, as it came into San Diego, collided with another plane, and that plane crashed. All on board were lost. Not one single survivor. To top that off, on May 25th, 1979, Doug again had a ticket for American Airlines Flight 191 out of Chicago's O'Hare Airport. But some last-minute business things came up and he had to cancel that flight, and he got a ticket on another flight. And he learned that that flight 191, the one that he originally had a ticket for, crashed, and all were lost. Not a single survivor. Doug Wyckoff missed the two worst aviation disasters in U.S. history. And we can say, he must be the luckiest man on the face of the earth. But even Doug Wyckoff has an appointment with death. You know, we exercise, we eat properly, we have our annual checkup, we take our vitamins, we brush and perm and polish. But let's face it, it's all in vain. Death wins. But for the believer in Jesus Christ, death does not win. Death is certainly an enemy, the ultimate enemy, but it's a defeated enemy because of Christ's resurrection, his victory over death. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. If we are in Christ, death is the door that ushers us into the very presence of God, our Savior. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16, it's very realistic. It says, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. Chapter 5, verse 1 of that same book says, now we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven. And that is great good news. I want to conclude with the testimony of the Apostle Paul. Here's a summary of how he lived. Philippians 1:21. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. How would you complete that sentence? For me to live is what? Football? Food? Finances? Family? Friends? The Final Four? Your good looks? Your good deeds? All that will fail you and leave you empty and alone. Only Christ is the solid foundation that stands and endures. For me to live is Christ. That's how Paul lived his life. Now here's how he faced death. 2 Timothy 1:12. He said, I know whom I have believed, and am convinced that he is able to guard or keep what I have entrusted to him for that day. So here is confidence, conviction, and comfort. He said, I know, I am convinced. And today we are confident and convinced and comforted that little Lundberg is enjoying the presence of her living Lord and has received her welcome. Well done, good and faithful servant.
Amen.
We say that not because she was such a good, sweet human being, which she was. Not because of her good deeds and her care for others and her ministries, but because she entrusted herself to Jesus Christ. She believed not so much in herself, but in the saving work of Jesus Christ on her behalf. Jesus Christ is the one who said, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies. That is the confidence, the conviction, and the comfort that we have in this life and in the life to come. And I need to ask each one of you here today, do you have this confidence? Do you have this conviction? Do you have this sure comfort? If you have entrusted your life to Jesus Christ, you do. If on the other hand, you have tried to make it on your own, if you have done it your way and not God's way, if you have trusted in yourself and what you have done rather than what Christ has done for you, if you have refused Christ's offer of salvation, the only thing you have when it comes to your deathbed is gifts and so much wishful thinking. I urge you today to claim the confidence and comfort and peace that only comes through Jesus Christ, our living Lord. And now let's enjoy some precious moments. Let's remember together and imagine.
I can only imagine what it will be like when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. day comes and I find myself standing in the sun, I can only imagine when all I would do is forever, forever worship you. I can only imagine, yeah. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak it all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine when all I would do is forever, forever worship you. I can only imagine.
Amen.